Keir Starmer calling for a Gaza ceasefire that lasts. And what's changed in 24 hours? This man has said nothing about a ceasefire. Then suddenly yesterday he goes into that territory. Let's have a little look at what it was that he said.
An end to the fighting, not just now, not just for a pause, but permanently. A ceasefire that lasts, conference, that is what must happen now. The fighting must stop now.
Now, it has to be relevant. This was at a Scottish Labour conference, of course, because the arguments in Scotland are a little different to the ones for the rest of the country, it seems. And Labour in Scotland have already talked about a ceasefire, but he's not gone there before.
No, but he also, his choice of language is both very interesting and very Starmer in terms of, you know, not really saying one thing or the other. So the SNP are pushing forward with ceasefire now. Starmer's changed his language to a ceasefire that lasts, and then, you know, said a bit it needs to happen as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But that's
not
where
quite the same as insisting on one now.
Exactly, and I think the problem with Keir Starmer with a lot of issues actually is he's too clever by half. He tries to meander his way through and sit on the fence, whereas what people actually want is clear leadership. For Labour, for UK politics as a whole, but for the Labour Party particularly, this issue is particularly difficult because the majority of their supporters, I think, are probably falling on the side of the Gazans and the Palestinians. Sure. But Starmer is trying to pitch himself as a centrist, and where perhaps, you know, Middle England is, which I think is much more balanced. So I don't think you're going to see any clear leadership from Starmer on this issue, or, you know, where this debate is taken forward coming from Starmer, and he's playing brinkmanship on it. But I think it's more interesting actually what Cameron has said as Foreign Secretary. He's changing his position, moving to perhaps a more Israel-critical stance. Yeah. And I think it has to be remembered that with regard to this conflict, a lot of the Hamas leadership is outside of the Gaza Strip, as most intelligence suggests. And there is a question that this has now become a PR war as much as it is a conflict. And you know, in the global conversation, I think the Gazan response and the Gazan approach is almost inviting Israeli incursion into their territory with what is planned in March. And you know, really what the UK is saying is the Israeli approach needs to be a lot more balanced, and perhaps pull back a bit. And I think that's where the international conversation is. But in this country, what we've seen, I think, is a very loud outpouring on the streets of what you would describe as pro-Palestinian sentiment. But I don't think that's where the country is at home.
I think so.